From superhero family betrayal to watching your father become your greatest enemy, these are the saddest, most emotional episodes of Invincible, starting with a heart-shattering funeral that shows us just how dark the superhero world can get. So let's begin with some heartbreak. Literally. Episode 3, Who You Calling Ugly? In this episode, we start with the Guardians of the Globe's funeral after their brutal murder. And honestly, the televised ceremony for fans around the world hits differently. But the real private funeral in the rain is where the tears really start. Like, imagine having to say goodbye to Earth's greatest protectors while not knowing the murderer is standing right next to you giving a speech. What makes this episode is seeing how the loss affects everyone, especially when Olga breaks down in despair and Mark realizes being a superhero comes with real dangers along with fun adventures. And you can see that the Omni Man is giving heartfelt speech about his fallen teammates while he's actually the one who killed them all. That's some serious psychological damage right there. Honestly, the whole scene is dark and somber with this creepy feeling because the murderer is right there in the middle pretending to grieve. Seeing Mark start to understand that being a hero isn't a game anymore and it's something that can get you and your friends killed is just heartbreaking. This is nothing compared to the wild emotional stuff they pulled next because I promise you this is just the beginning. Episode 1, It's About Time. This episode starts as a typical superhero origin story with Mark finally getting his powers and choosing his superhero name.
Who the hell are you?
I guess I'm working on that. Any suggestions?
And ends with the most shocking twist in superhero TV history. And watching what seemed like a lighthearted hero journey turn into a brutal massacre hits differently. The real emotional damage in this episode comes when the Guardian of the Globe gets savagely murdered by someone they trusted, and we spent the whole episode getting to know these heroes and caring about them. You can see how much they care about protecting people and being a family. The Omni Man kills them all while they're completely confused about why their teammate is doing this to them.
Why?
And it's really heartbreaking. The fact that we later learn he did it to weaken Earth's defenses for a Viltrumite alien invasion makes the betrayal even more devastating. However, most of the sadness in Invincible seems to be building up to something much bigger, and this is about to change completely. Episode 5, That Actually Hurt. Things get heavy when Mark and the new Guardians face off against Machine Head's crew, including Battle Beast. And honestly, this battle is brutal because it's basically pointless and due to the violence. These heroes nearly die just so Titan can take over as the new crime boss. The episode title says it's all because Mark and the Guardians get absolutely demolished and nothing. Watching Mark go from feeling confident to getting beaten almost to death while his dad just watches and could have stepped in at any time is just brutal. And you can see how vulnerable these new heroes actually are against real threats. What really gets me about this episode is how pointless all their suffering was, and the fact that Omni Man saw the whole thing and chose to stand by and watch his son get nearly killed instead of helping. Imagine your dad letting you get brutally beaten up when you could easily stop it. That kind of abandonment would mess anyone up. But we are not even at 50% of the total emotional damage Invincible has caused the viewers, and this wouldn't be the last time Mark's heroic idealism gets crushed by brutal reality. Episode 7, We Need to Talk. Oh boy. Well, this episode is basically one long conversation between Mark and his dad, and it's not your typical father-son chat. When Nolan finally tells Mark the truth about why he really came to Earth and killed the Guardians, it's like watching someone's entire world collapse in real time. This episode is so heartbreaking seeing Mark's face as he realizes his dad murdered the Guardians and has been planning to enslave his home planet this whole time. It's really heartbreaking because Mark's dad was his hero. The person he looked up to his entire life is actually a genocidal conqueror who killed his friends and mentors.
No, this doesn't make any sense. You love me. You love Mom. I know you do.
The voice acting here is absolutely incredible because you can hear Mark's heart breaking with every word Nolan says. The worst part is how casual Nolan is about explaining that he killed the Guardians to weaken Earth's defenses, like he's just talking about his day at work instead of revealing he's a mass murderer. And you can see Mark trying so hard to process that his loving father is actually a monster while also dealing with the fact that everything he believed about his family was a lie. But honestly, all these episodes don't seem like enough emotional damage compared to the next one. The most devastating episode in Invincible history. Episode 8, Where I Really Come From. This is the one that made grown adults cry like babies, and honestly, still gets emotional thinking about it. The brutal father-son fight begins in Chicago because this episode just breaks Mark along with everyone watching and contains the #1 saddest scene in the entire series according to fans. The subway scene is probably the most brutal thing I've ever seen in any superhero show. Nolan, well, he literally drags Mark through a subway train, using him as a human battering ram, while innocent people's bodies explode against Mark. And watching Mark try to save people while his own father forces him to kill them is just absolutely soul-crushing. You can see Mark's complete horror as he's being used as a murder weapon against innocent people. The saddest part is the emotional climax when Nolan demands to know what Mark will have left after hundreds of years when everyone he loved is dead, and Mark gives the most heartbreaking answer in TV history. It's really upsetting and tragic telling his father, who just tried to kill him, that he'd still choose him after everyone else is gone. That level of unconditional love hits differently. The worst part is seeing how Mark's answer completely destroys Nolan because no other Viltrumite has ever heard words like that, and it breaks through his programming. Watching this supposedly emotionless conqueror cry because he destroyed his relationship with his son is the most emotional moment in the entire series. And you can tell that despite everything, Nolan's love for Mark is real, and it wasn't enough to stop him from nearly killing his own child. This episode ends with Chicago in ruins, Nolan leaving Earth forever, and Mark in the hospital barely alive while trying to pretend he's okay, even though he's clearly just going through the motions. Here, father and son went from being the best friends to Mark losing his dad forever, and that final shot of Mark trying to smile while his world falls apart really drives home how much psychological damage this family conflict caused. Honestly, I just locked up all the emotions after watching this episode because how the heck do you recover from seeing your hero become your biggest enemy and then lose them forever? Someone needs to check on the Invincible fans from this episode because most of us still haven't recovered from the emotional trauma. And honestly, the fact that this is based on a comic book makes it even worse because we know there's probably more heartbreak coming in future seasons. The total emotional damage in this episode alone is over 1 million tears. And that's probably a conservative estimate because every time someone watches Mark say, "Your dad, I'd still have you," they end up crying.
Everyone and everything you know will be gone. What will you have after 500 years?
Dad, I still have you.
Your typical superhero show would let the hero win sometimes, but Invincible says, nah, let's just traumatize everyone instead. And honestly, that's what makes it so good even though it hurts so bad. If something like a regular superhero fight can make us cheer, then watching Mark choose his father despite everything can make us cry for hours. It makes total sense of this episode to cause the most emotional damage to viewers because unconditional family love hits harder than any supervillain ever could. So, what's the total sadness level? Well, if we assume each episode gets progressively sadder, the final episode would have caused around 10 million tears, which would bring the total amount of emotional damage Invincible caused to fans approximately to 15 million tears. So if you have a sad invincible moment in mind, drop it in the comments below. And hey, since you made it this far, you might as well subscribe. Please subscribe. My mental health depends on subscribers.